if you do a good anchor piece of content, it will serve as a spin-off for many other pieces of content that you'll be able to propagate in your business and serve to give you multiple opportunities to share that content. Do you do that? Or is that what you're saying? Or is that something that, can you expound on that?
Absolutely. So that's effectively what we try to do as much as possible. So the theory is, and again, I didn't create it. This is coming from the Gary V's of the world, right? Where you do that one long form anchor piece, and then effectively that serves, and you can slice and dice it a bunch of different ways depending on the platform that you're using. So we have a couple that are approved for use. So we try our best to cater them so that they're as appropriate for that specific platform as we can. But yeah, you're right. That's really what we do is we have that anchor piece that is the theme, call it, for the week. And we try our best to keep it to that theme, and then all the memes and everything else kind of go. We try to give ourselves about 3 to 4 weeks lead time. So what I'm recording now this week will probably not air for 3 or 4 weeks, right? So you got to back. So
yeah, and do you think of the audience? Are you doing this for the majority of your direct clients, or are they for your referral network and the sources and the CPAs that you're dealing with? Both? How do you think about that?
So it's technically all of the above, right? So really it's kind of whatever floats your boat, right? So I've done things that are more like personal business branding type stuff, psychological stuff of building a business, to also like a video specifically on gold, right? So it's kind of like whatever tickles your fancy, right? So you can do a little bit of everything. And I'd say the biggest thing is, like Rodrigo said earlier, express your personality, right? Own it. And if it's true and it comes from passion, then it will show.
And then we have a one question is, did you have like a general, could you give a description of who in the team is responsible for what, or help provide? So basically, can you flesh out or assign functions of the 3 members of your team? Also, I'm assuming you might be outsourcing some of this. So it might not be that your team is doing video editing or doing the print up. It might be that you're outsourcing that. But I think it would be useful to the folks viewing to get an understanding of how you brought structure to this. I think that people really, they say, I want to do it. And then they sit there in front of a blank page and they're like, I don't know what to do. And then you just say, do something, of course, and you'll figure it out. But I think it's helpful if you provide a bit of an example. I think others would benefit from that.
Sure. So I'll do my best. Effectively, think of myself. What I very lovely say on the team is that my job is just to be the pretty face, right? So I'm a quote unquote the actor, right?
Check.
Yeah, check.
Job done. 10 out of 10.
Show up and literally just record and bestow the knowledge or whatever it is. Like, you either need to entertain people or educate people, right? So I try to do one or the other in my videos, ideally both. And then I record it. Then ultimately I give it to my associate Grant, who will then go and do the post-production. So he effectively acts as director and producer, right? And that's kind of his role on the team to do that. And then I have my assistant, Sarah, but she's more on the ops side, running the business side of things as well. So she doesn't get involved as much on the social side, other than maybe just getting another set of eyes. And every now and then I'll get my wife, because my litmus test for stuff is, will my wife watch it? And if she won't, because she has zero interest in this side of things. So if she will watch it, then it's probably okay. So that's usually my way of doing it.
Do you include Uhtred of Bevenberg in there? Because that's what my wife watches. That's basically all she watches. But anyway.
And I'm not going to pretend like I haven't seen all of them, because I totally have.
Me too.
So Shiraz, let's keep on digging in. So we focused on the marketing and sales aspect, but there's other roles. Like, again, going back to my original question, what does your week look like? Who handles what aspect of the business? Because I know Grant does a little bit of the portfolio construction side. So walk through just how do you run the full business that you're currently building?
Absolutely. So I've kind of labeled us in a couple different ways. So my job is kind of more strategy, CEO, business development. Like, that's my job, is to bring in the money. I call it the rainmaker in some capacity. So that's usually by doing content creation, and then also proactively meeting with a lot of our champions on a regular basis, in addition to also helping on the onboarding process of the client. One of the things we had to do is revamp. We are so process driven in my business. That's the only way we've been able to actually keep this up, especially with the requirements of what clients expect from you in today's age. You used to be able to get away with just doing the investments. Now I got to do planning, estate, tax, cross-border. I have to do 10 different things for equal, if not less money than what people used to make, right? So you just got to be more efficient. So I would then pass it off to my associate, who will then help, and additionally on the onboarding process as well. And then ultimately my assistant, who then runs a lot of the ops on the background. So day-to-day activity. We are so process driven that even our portfolios are very much model based as well. So most of our clients, while it is very bespoke on the front end, on the planning front, most people will fall into, call it, the 32 different permutations and combinations that we currently have. Under rare circumstances, will it be one of the ones that are not there? So everything that we do is templated, and that's again by design. So my business is completely on purpose. So everything that we're doing is that so it's repeatable and scalable. And that was the one thing that I always knew that I needed to do, is make it so that I can scale and run fast. Because if you can't, then you're just gonna be dead in the water and looking at Bloomberg all day, and that's totally not what I want to do. So we have different people doing different things. Grant does a lot of the analytics, and then also acting as fully the associate on the team. And my assistant Sarah does a lot of just sort of the admin and then ongoing client management as well. So she's really kind of driving the front end with the client as well once they've been onboarded.
Very neat. Very neat. I mean, these are, everything that you're talking about is from the classic entrepreneur like playbook, right? You have to build it to scale. You have to have operations that are tight, so that you're not constantly just taking in unique snowflakes. Now, you said you have 36 different models, because I guess you're doing financial planning and all that stuff, but at least you have a model fit for a wide variety of, well, sadly ends up being a unique snowflake type of business. But that does not mean that you can't template it out to a certain degree, where you can deal with those unique snowflakes in models that you can then
36 models allows for quite a bit of granularity, I would say.
Well, that's private wealth.
Let me preface that. Let me get a little bit more granular, right? So there's really effectively 3 strategies, right? Like I run a Canadian-based strategy, I run an American strategy, and then I ultimately run a direct equity strategy. So there's actually really only 3, but in order to satisfy our regulatory environments, we have to slice them and dice them a bunch of different ways for the little old ladies with very conservative risk tolerance, and then somebody who's super aggressive speculator as well. So it's the same strategy, sliced and diced a bunch of ways. So realistically, there's 3 main sets of securities, if that's what you're asking. So there's 3 main.
Yeah, you kind of have to, like, one of the issues I ran with is that I had one model. I had one strategy that I really thought was best for clients when I started in the retail space. And it quickly became clear that this is not a private wealth business. It's an asset management business, and had to pivot that way. Because if you're private wealth, you do have to account for all the specific difference. In fact, you are required to account for the unique issues of every client. And what the technologies that we have right now available to us, or that advisors have available to them right now, it does allow scalability in a way that you couldn't do 20 years ago, right?
Well, yeah, this would have been impossible 20 years ago. I mean, when you did it, it would have been a lot harder than when I'm doing it now. So, what we did ultimately is, because there's 3 main sets of strategies. So one for US people, one for the Canadian people, and then one for those who want that cross-border strategy. And then sometimes there'll be permutations and combinations in between, but that's really the basics of it. So we're only running really 3 main strategies, which is completely scalable, and you can focus, right? And then other than that, like you said earlier, the regulators require us to satisfy one major variable, which is suitability, right? So I need to make sure that the recommendations that we're making are fully suitable for the individual. So as a PM, fortunately, you can write an IPS. So we wrote our investment policies specific to almost every permutation of client that we currently had. And so that's where all those different versions came from. So we built it from risk first. So the best.
We went back and forth on that a ton before you finalized that. Yeah.
Before I finalized, the biggest piece of advice you gave me as well was just don't blow up, right? Like that's really the biggest piece of advice I can give to any advisor, is you just need to stay in business for as long as possible. So if you build it from risk first and make sure that you're putting the client always first, then everything else kind of falls in order. So I just had to backfill, and that's really what we spend a lot of our time doing.